Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome to this enchanted house. I've reviewed 2 books on cottagecore so far, and they're okay, but they're not either books I would, recommend necessarily. And there are a lot of videos out there on fictional cottagecore books, like your Anne of Green Gables, your Secret Gardens. Um, I thought it'd be kind of nice to do a recommendation video of cottagecore books that are nonfiction. So this is my favorite nonfiction cottagecore books. So first up, and I know I just did a video on this, but Tasha Tudor. I didn't talk about each individual book so much in the video. I just kind of briefly went through them. But so this is my must-have cottagecore book right here. The Private World of Tasha Tudor. This is written by her herself, and she talks a lot about how her lifestyle and her philosophies. And she is someone who went and basically lived in a cottage. She's also a children's illustrator. But go watch the other videos. She's an amazing person. Of all the books, this is the one I would say is the must-have. I know it's out of print, so you have to hunt it down, but I managed to do it, so hopefully you can too. But there's other books by her that also feel very cottagecore. If you're looking for a cookbook, there is the Tasha Tudor Cookbook. It has her beautiful illustrations in it that are just, feel very cottagecore. It's very simple, kind of Americana type food. She does talk about how to roast a turkey on an open flame using a tin oven. So if you have the equipment and that's something you've ever wanted to try, she has it in here. I've not tried that one because this is not like a fireplace you can cook on, really. Next, there's Tasha Tudor's Heirloom Crafts, where she talks about all the homemade things she makes. Like she makes her own dolls, she's, quilting, all sorts of things. This is not a how-to book. It's more of sort of just an overview of what she does and her philosophy towards things and how she does things. But it's not like a step-by-step instruction book. These are very much like coffee table books. They're more for inspiration than any kind of instruction. And then finally, there's also Tasha Tudor's Garden. Once again, her philosophy towards gardening and how she gardens and lots of great photos of what her gardens look like. There's also Tasha Tudor's Dollhouse. It is the one book I have not tracked down yet for myself, and which is funny because it was my favorite when I was younger. And if you kind of have hung around me enough, I love dollhouses and miniatures. So I'm still looking for that one, but if you see that one and want to pick it up, it is also, I recommend it. So Tasha tried to live this very authentic 1800s life, and the cottagecore is a lot of looking at how things were done in the past and kind of maybe reviving that and adapting it from today. So I thought my next recommendation is sort of an original source book. This is Mrs. Beaton's Book of Household Management. This was published in 1861. By Mrs. Beaton, but her husband was a publisher, but she'd written all these articles in magazines, and they compiled them and expand upon them in this book. And this is everything you'd want to know about running a Victorian household: how to manage your servants, how to have a dinner, how to cook, all these different meals, how to work with the grocery store, how to keep your house clean, all that. So adulting was a thing even in the 1800s. You have all these women who are leaving home for the first time, and they are taking over a household for the first time, and there's all these new technologies, and honestly does not sound familiar even now. But so Miss Beaton wrote this guide to help them. But if you want to look how people live in a primary source, this is one of my favorites. So next up is The Forgotten Arts and Crafts. This is similar to, this talks about everything you would possibly need to live your life back in like the 1800s, 1900s. Some of these things are still done today, but mostly it's forgotten. So there's like the first half of the book is, so it's, first of all, it's got some really cute illustration and old-timey photographs and inspiration in that sense. But so the first part is, crafts of for the outside, like building, how they would build things, how to make fences, blacksmithing, that type of thing. There's sled making, boat building. So the second part is forgotten household crafts, and there's include kitchen crafts like open hearth cooking and baking, how the cleaning, laundry, decorative crafts, and it's just a really gorgeous book, and it has all sorts of great illustrations. So there's a whole thing on just making the stills where you would cross through the fences, net making, you live by the water, knife making. This is the introduction to the household. So we've got their wallpapering there, all different sorts of illustrations, like doing laundry day, different types of, things you would see on an open hearth, pressing linens. So this is one of the two DK books. They see was a community. The one I always remember is they had like one on castles, like on Castle Life. But this is one of them, which brings me to the next book, which is Country Life: A Handbook for Realists and Dreamers by Paul Henney. It is also a DK book. So in particular, this book is all about how to have like a home farm. This is a very farm core book. And even if you're not going to move out to the country and start a farm, it's still got things like, how to make your own, how to can things, how to making wines and meads. It gets into all the parts of farming, like animal husbandry, how to grow your own crops, food from the fields. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's once again, it has like really beautiful illustrations and photographs, and it can just be very inspirational. Like I said, it says dreamers too. So, but the reason I'm bringing this book up in particular, though, is because this illustration of a backyard farm on, I want to say this is a 100-foot farm. It's a 100 by 50-foot lot, which is, kind of a doable lot. It has shown up on a lot of my inspiration boards, and I just wanted to kind of give it a source. But yeah, so, I don't know if everyone, can do everything as picture, but it's sort of like an idea of, you could have like your little shed and your little cottage garden, little compost. Pond is, gonna depend where you live. Keeping pigs, if you are in town, sometimes livestock's not allowed. But then they go on to like bigger ones. So this is a small home farm. There's not actually the house in this one. I'm just guessing the house is over here. But there's little greenhouses, and they got chickens. And then medium home farm and a larger home farm. So it's inspirational and it's fun. And like I said, even if you don't have a farm, you can learn about crops. It's an overview. You're not going to buy this book and go start your own farm. Trust me. There's a lot of other resources out there that could help you do that if you want. There's things on like, even if you don't have a cow, you can still do things like make your own butter and ice cream, because you can get those things from a dairy, if you have a local dairy. So yeah, Country Life is one of my favorite books. So next up is sort of more, we're going to veer towards the spiritual side of things. As you know, I am a practicing witch, and two of my favorite books on house magic are kind of oldies but goodies, I guess. I have a love-hate relationship with house magic books. I buy them and then they kind of just say the same thing. So honestly, for me, going back to one of the originals is better. You may have one out there that you like more, but so my favorites are Ellen Dugan's Cottage Witchery and Garden Witchery. And I'll say these are from the early 2000s. There's parts of them, as we know, that are a little culturally appropriate and haven't aged well. Is a warning that she talks about feng shui in this, and that's one of my big pet peeves with home books is, at this point, feng shui is very much a different system than cottage witchery. It's great to learn about it, but it doesn't fit. But otherwise, there's a lot of great stuff she talks about in these. She talks about, because she grew up Pennsylvania Dutch and like folk magic and stuff like that. She is a she is a master gardener. She's a professional gardener. So she's, very knowledgeable about plants just in growing them in general, and manages to fuse that with a lot of magical stuff. So, and I've heard her talk, and honestly, even though these books are a little dated, I highly still recommend them over anything that's been published recently, because these actually feel more in depth in a lot of ways. They don't feel as shallow as a lot of home magic books. Since we are still in gardening and we still are in the spiritual, thanks, Bird. The next book is Cultivating Sacred Space by Elizabeth Murray. This book is a little different. This is concentrates on gardening, and it is very multicultural in a non-appropriative way, where she goes and looks at gardens from around the world, but then talks about bringing those feelings and that back to your own garden, and she looks at all sorts of different gardens, and she includes her own gardens. And it's very beautiful, and it talks about the spirituality of garden and art and beauty and aesthetic and symbolism. So she talks about Japanese gardens, and this is out in California. Once again, this book's is older, so I don't know if it's in print anymore. But then she has this is they made her and her husband, who eventually, if you read the book, spoilers, passes away. But this is a photo from their wedding. They created a garden just for their wedding and incorporated all these personal touches to it. And so this is about how to bring peace and spirituality and your own personality to a garden. One thing that she talks about in here is she had a tree that she used that had a hollow in it, and she uses a fairy mailbox, and she would write letters to the neighborhood children, and then children could write letters back. And I actually adopted that for my own daughter when I lived at the cottage. We had a fairy mailbox, and we decorated, and the fairies would write things, and she could write back to them and leave them presents, and they would occasionally leave her little gifts too. So but fairies is a great transition into my final recommendation. So for my final recommendation, there's actually 3 of these books. I only have 2 of them currently. I'm hoping by the ones. So these are a series of books produced by what was once called Fairy Magazine. It's now called Enchanted Living Magazine, and I'm actually going to include this as part of the recommendation. This is in the book. This is a magazine. It is one of my favorite magazines. It's the only subscription I currently have. It is about living an enchanted life, which is the whole point of this channel. But they have beautiful photography. Oh, I got the subscription card. Beautiful photography and recipes and crafts, and each one. So this was the Fairy Queens. But each edition has a theme. There's been one on Art Nouveau. There's been one on medieval. All their back issues are available for download on their website. I'll put a link to them below. And you can also buy the books directly from them. So the books ones I have are the Fairy Handbook and the Mermaid Handbook. And first of all, these are just gorgeous books. They look great on your shelf. They're really aesthetic. But they're like the magazine, but they're bigger. Their themes, their stories. Yeah, I should mention the magazine has stories and poetry and art, and so, but they're just beautiful books. I mean, it's got the pretty silver on the side even. The third one is the Unicorn Handbook. I just haven't bought it yet. It's on my wish list of things I'm going to buy for myself eventually. But so this one, there's a little article on flowers and herbs, fairies. I'm trying to find some of the fairy architecture. They have these beautiful fashion spreads with all these fairy tale gowns, ideas for posting parties, if you're a fairy party or a mermaid party. It's just, or they have all sorts of really neat crafts, like this seashell thing here. I highly recommend them. They're beautiful books. They're definitely worth the cost. So those are my recommendations for some nonfiction cottagecore books. If you've read these books, I'd love to hear your opinions on them. I'd love to hear your recommendations on nonfiction cottagecore books. I didn't really get into how-to books. Like I said in my one cottagecore book video, if you're interested in the craft, you really should just look for a book on that craft. If you're interested in beekeeping, look for beekeeping. If you're interested in quilting, look for a book on quilting. They're going to be the most detailed explanations you can get for those. But if you're interested, I could do videos on my favorite how-to books too. But these are sort of my favorite nonfiction, inspirational cottagecore books. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was and you liked it, please give it a like. Please check out my other videos. If you want to hang around, please subscribe. I have a proto Patreon if you want to go check that out and help find other ways to support the channel. I'd love to connect with you guys, so if you want to leave a comment below, or if you want to connect with me on other social media, I have links to my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter below. And I hope you guys have an enchanted day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!